August 2025 and entering a third year of genocide in Gaza that South Africa has so bravely fought against in the courts. I think what has happened is it is strange to think that what I just wrote is still relevant. It is strange to think that writing about war is just absolutely unchanged and is just as bad, just as sexist, just as pornographic. And it's nice to gather here. These are troubled times, that's for sure. And to kind of engage with that once again. I know many of the writers are not reading exactly what was in the collection, but I think they will read pieces that will still engage with the themes of this particular book. And I just want to very quickly focus also on this very tiny thing, because we rewrote the introduction to this particular anthology in December 2023. And it's strange for me, again, to read it now. And we have all this stuff where we talk also about the importance of love, or the act of love within acts of war, and the way in which that enters forms of writing. And I just want to very quickly do a nod to the thing that we wrote, because the Gaza thing was just getting worse and worse. And we said, okay, it's just going to get worse for a few months and then it'll stop. But here we are, year 3 about to start. And Veruska and I wrote, our collection cannot offer the solace of nostalgia because war refuses to be relegated to the past. As we prepare this volume for the Raja Press, we confront another war as catastrophic tragedy engulfs Gaza and Palestine as a whole. This time around, history itself is up for grabs as Israel and its Western allies insist on taking back the clock to October 7, 2023. And vengeance and hate has been served through an equivalent of 2 nuclear bombs dropped on Gaza in the last 80 days. And we were still counting days. Now we're counting months, years. So, and then we said daily feeds of Gaza's genocidal extermination have made their way to our phones and computers. We watch mothers clutching body bags of their children in an anguish for which words have yet to be invented. We watch men digging through the rubble with their bare hands, looking for their loved ones. Hospitals and medical facilities have been bombed into extinction. Even children are undergoing amputations without anesthesia in the war designed to annihilate a whole population. And the fog machine of lies and deception is whirring at full speed. We are seeing those speaking out being silenced. We are confronted with attempts to erase a people's existence and memory itself. Again, absolutely surreal that I can read this out and it's like today. I just wanted to start off. I wanted to invite Anna Arabindan-Kesson to speak first, because she has to attend something else after. Anna Kesson, you're associate professor, or have you become even more distinguished and high achieving than before? I don't know. But Anna Kesson is associate professor of art history and Black studies, I believe, at Princeton University, and has a brilliant book, which is a riff on Frantz Fanon, called Black Bodies, White Gold, Art, Cotton and Commerce in the Atlantic World. Anna used to be a nurse and was born in Sri Lanka, and her family fled from the war to Australia, and now she's in the US, and I would like to invite her to read.
Thank you. Thanks, Bhakti. It's lovely to see you all and be here. As Bhakti said, I will be reading from the book, and I was rereading this morning and feeling the same kind of cognitive dissonance and surreality that you described as these words and these narratives continue. But I'm really grateful to be in this community. And I'm sorry I have to rush off. As I was explaining to Bhakti, it's summer. I have organized too much for my children, so I have to run and deal with them after this. I don't know if it's possible. Could I just try to share an image, to share my screen and show an image because it comes up in the essay. If it's fine, if not, I can just put the link in the chat, but let me just see if I can do this. It would just be nice for you to look at something else as I talk. Okay. So I'm just going to read, portions of the chapter. And it's called What is Tamil for Loss? Remembering the Sri Lankan Civil War. I wrote this 10 years after the end of the Civil War. And so I'll just kind of make the tense changes as I read. My grandmother always reminded me, you've lost your mother tongue. Yes, I've lost my mother tongue. The words, the sounds, the rhythms of speaking to which I was born. I willfully lost this language after we moved to Australia, where my voice continually marked me as foreign. Losing my mother tongue was a way to survive. I've often wondered if, had I continued to learn and speak Tamil with my mother, I would find myself now, after our migration, and after over nearly 2 decades after the end of the Sri Lankan Civil War, with the more articulate means of commemorating the past. So much has been lost as a result of that war. Tens of thousands of Tamil lives were lost, a genocide occurred, and as we still see today, still remains unacknowledged. The destruction of Tamil sacred sites, the seizure of formerly Tamil-owned land, the erosion of villages and communities through displacement, and the disappearance of family members whose whereabouts still remain unknown. While the government has created official memorials to commemorate their victory over the Liberation Tamil Tigers of Elam, or the LTTE, no other casualties may be mourned. In effect, what continues to be lost is the experience of Tamils affected by the war. This is why I wonder whether, if I had recourse to the sounds and figures of Tamil, to the expressions and phrases and cadences of speaking and reading the language, I might also find another route to grieve and remember and commemorate that would allow me to move around the contested terrain of the war's aftermath. In this contested terrain, so I'm realizing, the history I've just described is disbelieved by some. And again, as we see today with what is happening in Gaza, in order to even remember what has been lost, I have to make a case for it. And to make the case, I have to retell this story, a story that is part of me, although I did not experience all of its effects firsthand, because my family left Sri Lanka when I was almost 6. Retelling what I grieve for requires finding a language within a language. It means framing within recognizable forms, describing using recognizable signs, summarizing using familiar terms. Because commemorating these acts of genocide, when they take place in non-Western countries, also requires producing the reality for the West. Language has always been politicized in Sri Lanka, and it was only in 1988 that Tamil was actually legislated as an official administrative language of the country. So it's inextricably linked to identity and has been so carefully legislated to divide communities and generations. It's now identified as a key component of the post-conflict reconciliation process. Because of this importance, where and how we recount these narratives becomes all the more urgent. As the amazing novelist Sugi Ganeshananthanan writes, to mourn these deaths requires a series of retellings. And I just want to quote her because I think what she writes still has so much resonance around how we speak about, or how we can speak about, Palestine. She said, I must retell not only the version of the story I consider the truest and the worst, but also the versions in which no one died or in which those who died are unworthy of mourning. My words must reenact and contain not only the deaths and my grief, but also their negation. One must pass and explain what is lost. Yes, lives, also land and homes. And then there is the matter of those who have not been returned, who remain in camps somewhere between lost and found. Always we remember those who have been taken away and remain unknown, neither lost nor found, neither alive nor dead. The politicization of grief in the aftermath of war's end is all the more painful and violent because it means that remembrance requires first working through this instrumentalization of loss before even beginning to reach a place from which to build our memorials. In passing, I find it hard to hold on to and center grief because each time grief overwhelms. When discussing his own relationship to this history and to Tamil in particular, another writer, Anuk Arud-Pragasam, has explained in interviews that speaking English in Sri Lanka is a public marker of a certain status. It's a colonial language, a language that I've had to move with in order to appear recognizable. I'd probably started losing my tongue before I even began to speak as a child. English is the language in which loss can become internationally validated in our Western political landscape, making it both highly publicized and easily politicized. But when you no longer have any language, any other language in which to probe this inner unseen world of mourning, your memorialization must always and only take place in public. Its validity is dependent on being recognized. And it's this relationship between public and private validation that acts of commemoration must mediate. Without a physical space or place to perform these acts of public remembrance, official forms of language and phrasing become significant markers. And this is why I wanted to have this work by Shananthanan, or Samuel Ramapillai Shananthanan, who's a really significant artist based in Jaffna in the north of Sri Lanka. This work is called The Incomplete Thombu, and I end my chapter with a short description of this work. So I'll end this with the same, because I think this is where the work of creatives, of artists in particular, give us a language and a way to work through these cognitive dissonances. Shananthanan has compiled an archive of living memories in this artist book called The Incomplete Thombu. He reuses a Dutch word for land registry and creates this public registry, which is a collection of memories of home drawn and recounted by the communities who were forced to flee from the Jaffna Peninsula. For many, the book is actually divided into drawings and topographical renderings of participants' homes as they remember them. For many are destroyed, and it also includes this type narrative that he's put into those columns. He uses the language of accounting, which underpins, as we know, that these competing discourses around the war and around the war that's taking place now in the genocide that's taking place now in Gaza, that need to prove or collect evidence that certain things happened and certain things did not. He transforms this bureaucratic violence into a receptacle that commemorates what has been lost. Shananthanan's act of storytelling is, for me, an act of reclamation of the lost, of the unknown, from the erasure of the official record. It's not only a powerful form of memorialization, it's also shelter for those who have been displaced. I think of his work often as I contemplate what it is to commemorate the Sri Lankan Civil War without either a public space in which to come together with others or without the familiar language by which to vocalize something like a shared memory. His receptacle, his container, contains stories of women and men who refuse to be defined by catastrophe, who've built, using what they have, their stories, and created a memorial to what has been lost. Their voices generously create space for careful forms of witness from us, Their stories urge us to continue the call for the restoration of Tamil civil rights, and particularly in this current climate of social and political unrest, to work against the cultures of violence and religious extremism that are tacitly ignored by government administrations that continue to fall back on restrictive measures of securitization. I'd say too, their stories continue to be used in creating alliances with the people of Gaza and highlighting those affiliations, and again, retelling and naming this act as genocide. And so it's from this space that I remember the war and the anniversary or the long afterlives of its end, while I also begin the long and arduous journey to reclaim my mother tongue. Thank you.
On to Jehan.
Thank you, Bhakti, and that was really beautiful. I also have to apologize because I'm held hostage by a 7-week-old newborn, and I will have to read and run, as I just mentioned to Bhakti. So I'm going to read a poem that is still a work in progress, and it's called "People Like Us." To sit in a cafe and to have a coffee and not worry about my country burning. On the tube, reading about people starving to death without blinking. To finally think of the news as news. To be able to skim the headlines and stories. To not dream of drones or bodies. Not my people, not my language, not my accent, not the eyes of 2 million loved ones staring back at me from every screen for the last 2 years. Hungry, besieged, brutalized, displaced, or dead under the rubble. To go to protests and then drinks after. To vote or not, because it's complicated and I'm not sure about politics. To know a summer home and a winter home, but never displacement. To hear the voice of my mother every day, because she didn't die when the hospital was hit. To move around without a wound the length of the border inside my body. Not my family, not my sisters, not Omar. To debate genocide or ethnic cleansing, conflict or occupation. To smoke cigarettes without thinking of the price of sugar in Gaza. To wash my hair, have a meal, take a walk, go to work. Like 61,400 people have not been killed by the Israeli army in front of the whole world. To feed him, knowing that half of those killed in Gaza were children, our children. To enjoy the summer, start the school year, go to that wedding, skip a meeting, without thinking of mothers using garbage bags as diapers, holding up hungry skeletons to the sky. To see a tomato for the first time in 3 months. To make a home out of bed sheets and tins. To look for water and find it. To come back alive with a sack of flour. To hold your hand waiting for the ambulance to look for medicine and not find it. To come back with a gunshot wound and no flour. To forget fruit, but remember the smell of jasmine. To pray for death instead of hunger, to find my mother. So that's the poem that I'm working on.
Amazing.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jehan. My gosh.
That's all I will read, actually.
Thanks. Wonderful. And we'll thank you. That's just sort of straight from the heart of Gaza.
Thank you,
Jehan. And Valerie, you want to go next? Go for it. Do you want to say a little of each one? If you all can just say a little bit of what you do, who you are, that would be lovely.
Sure. So my name is Valerie. I'm a nurse and also a humanitarian aid worker. I worked with MSF for several years, and I think that's a good overview of who I am. And at times I like to write about what I've seen. So I'm going to start my piece. The sound of an ambulance approaching the hospital gate at high speed. A little 5-year-old girl hit by a mortar attack is lifted out of the ambulance. She has deep wounds on her left leg, and her left arm is starting to turn blue. She's still alive, awake, but I can't stop noticing that her confusion is masked by cries and periods of sleep. She lost her mother and siblings in this attack. Her father, who survived the attack, was transferred to another hospital. I comb her brown hair back from her face with my hands and take off her earrings and transfer her to our operation theater. I place her earrings in a little bag to save them for her. I think that perhaps her earrings are something by which she can remember her mother. Then I saw it. A screaming father holding his unconscious child came running in. The outline of the father's ribs could be seen through his ripped shirt. Tears etched lines across the dust on his face, an expression of the paralysis of fear. Sometimes I remember this as if it happened in slow motion. It was surreal and looked like a TV news clip. But then I realized that he was actually running toward me. I quickly snapped out of it. I took the boy from him and applied oxygen to the child's face, which was missing a chunk of flesh from the left cheek. I looked up and saw 4 more children get carried in, one missing his nose. People who survived lost everything they had, their homes, their limbs, and their loved ones. I'd never seen so many wounded children. I never understood what it was like to live in a place where just being alive means you're privileged. I've seen plenty of suffering in the world, but never anything like this. People's faces and eyes painted the horrors they had lived through. And if they still had their limbs, their feet were raw from walking barefoot for kilometers to reach the nearest hospital. Everyone has post-traumatic stress disorder, and I am not sure how the children will ever grow up to be okay. Most are parentless and living in camps now, and it is impossible to find a remaining family member in the shuffle of people that happens with this referral process. At the same time, as this war rages on, another one is about to begin. I was not in Gaza. These are my memories from Mosul. 7 years have passed since, but I still see these horrors like they happened just yesterday. Yet they are happening. They're happening to you in Gaza. As I watch your nightmare unfold from afar, I relive mine. Dearest healthcare worker, I know the frightening sight of the injuries you see, crushed and blown apart. I know what it feels like to hold a malnourished baby and the sound of their inaudible cries. I remember what it's like to receive the limp body of a child from a screaming parent, begging and looking at us with despair and hope that we will save them. I know the smells you're smelling. I know the fear of getting attacked while working in a hospital, a place deemed as a safe space under international humanitarian law. I know the exhaustion from not sleeping. I know what it feels like to look for the parents of a child that is brought in injured and now an orphan. I remember the fear I felt with every explosion, along with the vibrations that go through your body into your organs, and the relief you feel afterwards when realizing that every explosion you hear actually means that you're still alive. Dearest healthcare worker, I spoke to some friends that I worked with in Mosul and who recently worked with you in Gaza, and they told me it's even worse. I struggle to find the right words for you because I am not with you, and I'm truly sorry for that. Dearest healthcare worker, I also want to mention that beyond these memories, I also remember the good ones. I remember the smiles and tears of joy when families were reunited. I remember the happiness of the patients we discharged that we did not think would survive. I remember the relief we felt when my coworkers came to work because it meant that we all made it through the night. I remember finding the uncle of a child that was believed to be an orphan with the help of the community who knew where her mother was. And eventually we reunited them. And I remember the simple moments, a conversation, a neighbor wiping my tears, a game of cards to distract from the incessant bombardment. I want you to know that we honor you and everything you do. So I write this letter to you, dearest healthcare worker, to remind you to stay strong, to hold on to the beautiful moments, no matter how small they may be. But mostly I write to you to remind you that we love you. Love always, Valerie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Should we go with you, Beverly?
Good morning, everybody, from the Sierra Nevada foothills of Northern California. Thank you to Bhakti, thank you to Bogani and Penn, South Africa for the opportunity and for this wonderful event. I just have to gather myself for a minute. The readings have been really powerful. Thank you for sharing your work. So I'm Beverly Parayno, and I'm the author of the short story collection Wildflowers. And I also serve on the board of Philippine American Writers and Artists based in San Francisco, also known as PAWA. And I also serve on the board as on the board of the Munster Literature Centre in Cork, Ireland. And I work as a development consultant for nonprofits and universities. I'm actually going to read from my piece in the book. So my paternal grandmother, Anastasia, died of disease and malnutrition and was buried in haste in an unmarked grave when she passed away shortly after the Americans liberated the Philippines from Japanese occupation during World War II. I grew up listening to these stories, and although I have never directly experienced food insecurity, I do have secondhand memories of these feelings of food insecurity and starvation, and they often get triggered. For example, they got triggered during COVID, during the food shortages, and they're currently getting triggered now with the desperate situation in Gaza, the obstruction and restriction on aid, including food and medical supplies. Also, the current administration's attack on vulnerable people by broadening the work requirements in order to maintain eligibility for food stamps. So about 2.4 million people in the US are projected to lose their food stamp benefits, including children and families. So again, while I have not experienced food insecurity directly, I do have a lot of emotion that gets raised when there are situations where food is not available or actually being restricted. So with that, I'll just read a few pages from my story called Victory Joe, and I will start sort of near the beginning. And again, Victory Joe, it appeared originally in Warscapes, thanks to Bhakti, and it appears in my short story collection Wildflowers, and also appears in this anthology. As their caravan made its way through the town square, Anastasia noticed the checkpoints had been removed. Filipinos no longer had to show their IDs or bow to Japanese soldiers who had had the power to shoot them on the spot. She would never have to say konnichiwa again. She wept uncontrollably, which led to a bout of coughing so violent her body shook. She hacked for several minutes until she finally came to a rest. Her chest ached and her throat felt prickly and hot. When she spotted blood on the white cloth, she bunched up the handkerchief and buried it deep into the pocket of her dress. When they reached their ancestral home on Bayawa Street, Anastasia gasped at the magnitude of the destruction. Their street, once lined with mango trees and delicate white orchids, was now littered with broken glass, shrapnel, empty bullet shells, and pieces of detonated grenades. Blood was everywhere. Anastasia released a loud cry, the most sound she'd been able to muster in a long time. She reached for her husband Silvestre's hand, but he pulled away. Without saying a word, he approached their house and shook each bamboo stilt hard. Anastasia wondered how much strength he had left in him. Satisfied that the foundation of the house was intact, he climbed the dilapidated steps and entered. Anastasia asked Roberto to help his father. The Quindipans and Ortizes said their goodbyes from a distance, unwilling to come too close to Anastasia. They had joined her family 2 years ago when they fled their home in the middle of the night and had hidden with her family in the 2-room shack in a remote rice field. Now, the women held handkerchiefs over their noses and forbade the children to approach Anastasia. They backed away from her cart as they thanked her for saving their lives, and then ran off to inspect the state of their own homes. She heard the shuffling of furniture and the crushing of broken glass. A small group of young men walked past the cart, and she called out to her oldest son, "Guillermo." The men looked down at her but continued to walk, kicking objects out of their way. Guillermo, who was 18, had been called to active duty at the onset of the war. The last time Anastasia saw him, he'd been ordered to join troops around Manila, the Japanese stronghold. Before he left, she placed a medallion of St. Christopher around his neck, ensuring his safe return. Silvestre collected Anastasia from the wooden cart and carried her upstairs to the living room, where he'd set up a makeshift bedroom. Slowly, he placed her on a low, sunken mattress. The walls were pocked with bullet holes. Anastasia looked around the narrow room, which was at once comforting and strange to her, while she recognized it as her former living room, where she and the family had spent most of their leisure time. It had been stripped of all that was familiar. She'd need to reacquaint herself with it in the same way one reconnects with an old friend. Anastasia smiled when she saw the faint picture of Jesus hanging above the bed. Although it was worn, she could see the soft outline of his face, his long brown hair, and the sacred heart in the middle of his chest, large, pinkish red, wrapped with thorns and adorned in a gold crown. How had she managed to leave this behind? She embraced Silvestre as he lowered her to the bed. It was the closest she'd been to her husband in a long time. His body felt much smaller, his arms weak and unsteady. He smelled of sweat, sun, and tobacco. An American soldier must have given him a cigarette. Anastasia tightened her arms around her husband and began to weep. She held on to his thin body as he tried to pull away. With all the strength she could find, she locked her hands together to hold him as close as possible. "We're home," she whispered. "There's plenty of work to be done," he said. Later that evening, Roberto came into her room and lit an oil lamp. The moon was low and yellow. Large mosquitoes bounced in through the small window that faced the road. "Daddy said it's my job to take care of you," said Roberto. "What did you do this evening?" she asked. "We burned broken furniture." She held Roberto's hand. "Tomorrow we're going to set fire to the overgrown rice field. Daddy says we'll catch the mice as they try to escape." Roberto produced a brush and began to work the tangles out of Anastasia's hair. She loved the feel of the bristles against her scalp. It made her moan with pleasure. Crickets sang their mating calls in the distance, the low hum of an American jeep that patrolled nearby. "Count to 100, she said. Roberto stroked her long black hair with the brush as he counted. Anastasia melted into the mattress, the first one she'd rested on in 2 years. She looked up at her young son, who resembled his father so much. Roberto had thick furrowed brows, narrow black eyes, warm brown skin. She would never regret giving him her portion of food when they were in hiding. In the beginning, she'd given him a small amount of her ration of rice mixed with corn, marungay, and kamote leaves, sweet potato, and other root vegetables they'd managed to unearth by hand. But over time, as the war progressed and Roberto began to go blind from malnutrition and grew weak from beriberi disease, Anastasia increased the portions until there was little left for her. It was what any mother would do. Most of the other mothers had done the same. No matter how much Silvestre had argued with her to eat, she hadn't listened. At 36 years old, Anastasia had had a full and happy life. She grew up on a farm, married Silvestre by an arrangement her parents had made, and had given birth to 2 strong sons, although she'd lost 2 daughters in between. What Anastasia hadn't understood was how Silvestre could eat his full portion, knowing Roberto went to sleep each night hungry. "Braid my hair, Anako, my child," she said. Roberto pulled on the strands to weave them tightly together. "It looks pretty, Mommy," he said. Feeling drowsy, she said, "Blow out the lamp before you leave." Thank you very much.
Well, that was beautiful. I think I'm next. Thank you, everyone. As Beverly was saying, we need a minute after all these just wrenching, gorgeous readings. Thank you, Bongani, Penn, South Africa, Bhakti, the gift that goes on giving. You were an early supporter of my writing, and I'm so grateful. So I'm here in Fresno, California, which is the ancestral lands of the Okots and Mono peoples, and I teach at California State University, Fresno. I thought I would read. This wasn't in Insurgent Feminisms, but you'll recognize the themes, and I thought, for those of you out there celebrating independence from the British in South Asia, Azadi Mubarak, what I'm going to read is an excerpt titled "Fireworks or the Bombing of Karachi," which is about my child's memories of December 1971, and one of the wars with India. It's the sounds that terrify. First, the dreaded siren, menacing in its ascending scale and filling the air as it swoops down, reaches into my body and hollows out my stomach. It's part wail, part nagging, but there's no mistaking the threatening tone. Drop ball play, grab the ball of cotton wool some grown-up gives me, stuff it in my ears so I don't go deaf from a blast in the vicinity, between my teeth so I don't bite my tongue off. Run to shelter under tables, under chairs, and hope that my mother, clutching my baby sister, so new to the world, will make it too. Brace myself for the deafening thuds with which bombs will hit the earth, shaking the ground. It might be the fee-fi-fo-fum of an ogre, except that this is no leisurely giant's pace. If an explosion doesn't deafen me, my own heart's pounding will. I am 8 years old. I don't want to die. The siren means instant blackout, so here I am, hunched in the darkness, trembling. How did the game get so deadly? Time stretches while I crouch, disoriented in the darkness, tasting the cotton wool between my teeth, and praying that if we have to go, one mighty bomb blast takes us all together, leaving no one behind to sorrow. Our family of 5 live with my uncle and aunt's family for now. Since war broke out between Pakistan and India in December 1971, our home camouflages itself in a layer of cheap, mud-colored paint, as do all neighboring homes. Roadsides are dug up to form trenches should people be caught out of doors during an air raid. Indoors, the adults observe such safety measures as they can. They paper the windows for blackouts, taping them at the edges as though that will keep the glass intact. The tape itself, a gesture of agency in the face of absolute powerlessness. 9 of us live in the 2-bedroom home, plus a domestic worker whose Bengali ancestry renders him mildly suspect for a couple of weeks. Does he really take a flashlight up to the rooftop during blackouts to invite Indian warplanes to bomb us? Other relatives shelter with us too, including my elderly great-aunt, to whom the blackouts make no difference because she cannot see. At night, most of us occupy floor space. To accommodate everyone at meal times, Khalami and Ammi spread a big white bed sheet on the living room floor, dot it with dinner plates along the edges, and plant the curries, veggies, or dal in the center with rice and chapatis. The women may worry about rationings and hoardings, but we children who border the bedsheet with crossed legs and holiday appetites never go hungry. The guest family includes 2 girls my age, Gosser and Kishwar, who infuse the wartime winter with giggly warmth. Kishwar is particularly fun to frighten because the slightest boo startles her. A second siren signals that we have survived the bombings for now and can go back to the patriotic songs on the radio, the lyrics of which I will remember forever because they sing a simple world of good and evil, victory and defeat, enemies and martyrs. Some are sweet love songs to Pakistan, like 2 of Suhail Rana's compositions, Soni Dharti Allah Rakhe, and the jaunty favorite of children, Jeeve Jeeve Pakistan. Both are sung by 20-year-old Bengali singer Shehnaz Begum. In this fraught time, when the Bengali people seek their independence from Pakistan, Shehnaz Begum appears on our black and white television screen with her earnest and perfectly chiseled face, her big coiled eyes, dimples at the ready, and her hair bobbed with 2 carefully curled locks by each cheek that look particularly lovely in profile. But the patriotic songs on radio and television elide the reality of my many relatives in India. Abu's beautiful sister, Masuma, the innocent, tucked away in some Bihari village where the love of 6 Pakistani brothers and sisters can't reach her. Amma's mother, my great-grandmother in Patna, whom I will never meet, but whose love leaps across the Wagah border between India and Pakistan, whenever that border isn't sealed, and materializes on our palates as succulent layers of dried mango or crunchy sesame seed candy, and in our hands as little plastic hens that lay sugar eggs. India is home to all of Ammi and Khalami's aunts and uncles and their offspring, cousins of all ages, including mine. So many invisible loved ones who had stayed put in Patna after partition that I don't know which side to sing for, though I know I want to live. The 1971 war with India, which will decide the fate of majority ethnic Bengalis in East Pakistan, lasts only 13 days, from December 3rd to the 16th. Pakistan's supposed preemptive strike results in India's Operation Trident, targeting Karachi's naval vessels and oil tanks. Among Pakistan's devastating losses are the lives of all 222 sailors aboard the PNS Khyber, known in its colonial incarnation as HMS Cadiz. Another 33 men are aboard the minesweeper PNS Muhafiz, built for Pakistan in Bellingham, Washington, in the early years of the Cold War when the United States and the Soviet Union were lining up their proxies in South Asia. The PNS Muhafiz sinks before its sailors can send a distress signal, no time to bid their breaths goodbye. Karachi harbor burns for days, the Arabian Sea bearing witness. The architect of the attack, Admiral Nanda, was born in Karachi. Against the quiet tug of birthplace, the noise of nationhood. I will miss Qausar and Kishwar when the war ends and they return to their neighborhood. Life will take us on divergent trails, and though we will have dodged the bloodthirsty bombs of our childhoods, we'll never see one another again. The border with India will remain closed for years, my grandmother on one side of it, my great-grandmother on the other. Shehnaz Begum will return to her birthplace, Dhaka, in newly independent Bangladesh and sing patriotic and filmy songs in Bangla for her country. When she dies in 2019, Bangladeshis and Pakistanis alike will mourn her. After graduate school in Boston, I'll devote my scholarly energies to war narratives. Someday in faraway Fresno, I'll have to explain to my children why I love and fear balloons, love the sight of their whimsical bounce in the air, but grow anxious and watchful at the mere thought of their popping. Why I have never joined them and their dad to see 4th of July fireworks, except on television where I can lower the volume. Someday when the children have grown up and gone and I have only myself and my cats to worry about on 4th of July, beloved Palestinian-American poet Naomi Shihab Nye will gift the world the words I fumbled for. And I quote, "To enjoy fireworks, you would have to have lived a different kind of life." Who can soften the sound of smashing glass? There's something terribly final about its shattering, about the emptiness that reverberates in the wake of the smash. The moment demands our mourning, something fragile, broken beyond repair, something that might have been beautiful. Perhaps that's how our hearts would sound if we could hear them breaking, or the hope of a better world, if we could hear it fall apart. Thank you.
I guess that's me after. Thank you so much for having us, Bhakti, for the invitation. And thank you, Bongani, for hosting us and for PEN US South Africa. My name is Otoniya Okot Bitek. I also go by Julie or Julianne. And I'm speaking to you from Kingston, Canada, from the home and the lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. I am so honored to be here in conversation with you because of all these stories that keep company, even though they speak of so many different spaces and times. It's almost as if we're held together with our grief, and the people of Gaza would know that they're not alone. And we think and feel with them. So I'm going to read a poem, and I should say I'm a poet. I'm going to read a poem that I've been trying to write since 2003. I first started writing it in December. I've read a version of it before, and I'm still working through it. And I'm going to share my screen because sometimes I have trouble reading it. The genesis of the poem is, I thought the genesis of the poem was an image of a boy I saw on social media from the rubble in Gaza. It turns out that I have been writing a boy before. A boy showed up in my 100 Days book on day 66, and that poem was written after the book was submitted for publication, because it turns out I had 99 poems, not 100. So this boy shows up, and I write about him. And years before that, in a short fiction piece that I had written, there was a boy in it too. And so it turns out that this boy keeps appearing to me to tell me something, and I'm trying to learn from it. I don't know what. I suspect that it's about the work of witness and the relationship to language. So I'm going to share my screen, and so that you can follow along with me. And if I trip, you know what I'm trying to read. So where is it now? There. It should be even more. And I cannot see it. So sure, right there. Big green arrow. Okay. If we're still counting days, 1. It's been days since we started counting. Breath and then snuff. Breath and then snuff. Black and white images blur like puffs of flour in the air, like dust whirled about on this land, and headlights out the sides of the computer screen spill, and I strain to sieve words through laced fingers into a large vase on a coffee table in the living room at home that holds sunflowers with heads bowed. And the sky, every day the sky, every single day the sky, mostly blue, bright blue, deep blue, blue-green, blue sky, sometimes white sky, sometimes gray sky, sometimes night clouds, sometimes a Milky Way, sometimes stars, sometimes nothing but black velvet between flares of dusk and dawn. 2. A boy I wrote about in a poem dissipates, as if he hadn't been a person just here and just now. Snuffed, as it were, as if we could ever unbe having already been. Snuffed, and the page is blank. A boy from that long night of war that is not just today, and it is today, and it has been many, many days. Sometimes years, sometimes decades, now straddling 2 centuries, he reappears among the rubble and looks at me directly to say, now what? Now what? Now what? What is your responsibility to us? Me. Say cloud, say sky, say boy, say blue, say everyday, say poem, say sometimes, say ladder, say flowers, say love, say kite, say sky again. Say mother, say God, say mother again. Say anthill, say bread, say hiccup, say flower, say mask, say hello, say goodbye, say why, say what, for. Words on a woodpile on Sunday afternoon, set them aflame, set them aflame, set them aflame, set them all on fire. If words cannot even begin to contemplate this boy, this one, this ours, this boy with his love, this boy with his life, this boy with his hands by his side, this boy who was just here just now. Say the boy was a sunflower. Say the boy was love. Say the boy was silver streaked through stone, through hair, silver ring over finger. Say bone, say promise, say this boy in the rubble was silver. Say he was a boy with steadfast eyes into the camera, a boy like silver, like life. 5. Bone weather, days ache at the knee, at the wrist, at the elbow. Bone weather is not skin weather. 6. In these watery days and liquid night skies, we seek out stone. Stone as story keeper. Stone as embrace. As weapon. As home. As solid. Stone as rock. Rock as pebble. Pebble as music. Music as life. Life as water. Water as mother. Mother as verb. Verb as gathering. What now? What now? What now is your responsibility to us? Thank you.
My gosh, that was intense. That was all very intense. You've all made me cry at different points. And it's just truly stunning. Thank you, everybody. And Julie, I'm glad we ended with you because somehow it synthesized something, just that one image. And just like the stunning nature of, form and the way in which you write. So thank you, all of you. Before everything else, I wanted to, we started in a bit of a rush and we were delayed, and I just wanted to do heartfelt thanks to Bongani for inviting us all here, and to PEN South Africa for putting this together. We're really grateful always to come together. The anthology is getting on in age, but we seem to find relevance, as everyone has proven again and again. And I am excited, of course, next Thursday at the same time, a really old anthology, which is again, or rather never leaves the news, it's called Literary Sudans, an anthology of literature from Sudan and South Sudan, which was published in 2017 or 2016, I don't even know anymore. But some of those writers will be joining for readings, including Leila Abu Leila, who just won the Pen Pinter Prize in the UK, the prolific but completely volatile Abdulaziz Baraka Sakin, so expect technology issues from his end, and brilliant translator Adil Babakir, and a wonderful, yet another medical worker and doctor, David Lukudu, who is a wonderful short story writer. I guess this is what doctors do at night, and nurses and medical workers. They go home and scribble war stories. But thank you again, everybody, for opening wounds. I don't know what that does. It was beautiful.